That's our latest look at the news. I'm Damon on WJOP Radio, WJOP LP, Newburyport, 96.3 FM, part of the Greater Newburyport Community Media Hub. And now airing the morning show on Comcast Channel 9 in Newburyport. Damon with you, and our guest right now is Stephen Comley Sr., founder of We the People, a national whistleblower organization based in Rowley. And Steve, welcome back. Haven't had a chance to chat with you on the radio for probably about 2 months now, I think. And a lot has happened since then, hasn't it?
Sure is. And glad to see you got the news here at this station, because I know a lot of people were upset when WMPP was sold. And so I really appreciate you having me on, because, there's a lot of media, even locally, that are intimidated about this issue. Well, that's too bad, but I'm glad that you have the courage, and the station has the courage to have me on.
Well, thank you. The issue is the Seabrook Power Plant, and one of the things that you are in the midst of trying to accomplish right now is getting the first responders within the 10-mile radius of the plant, as well as towns that are contiguous to that, trying to get them to, hold drills, right?
Right. Well, it's coming along real nicely, too. I've been working on it for over 2 years now, and it started with Senator Tarr, Representative Hill, and Sheriff Cousins having the courage to challenge the NRC, and they have written letters quite a while ago for the NRC to hold a hearing for first responders, because obviously they're the first ones that are going to have to respond if there's an accident at the Seabrook plant. And right now, there are three segments of our population that, as far as I'm concerned, in the eyes of the NRC, are expendable. And what got me started was my family's been in the nursing home profession for over 80 years in Massachusetts. And I had a resident in the home when I was running it. My son runs it now. He's run it for over 25 years now. It's fourth generation, and you don't see that too often now. And but what's got me started is, one of our residents asked one of the nurses for me to come to her room. And so I went to her room, and I said, what's wrong? She says, well, Mr. Comley, I've been reading the Boston Globe about what happened at the Chernobyl accident, and the plume from the accident came as far as Vermont and affected our cow's milk in Vermont. And of course, now a lot of us have found out that because when Fukushima blew up, it affected the air in Mass. In the industry and the owners of Seabrook and a lot of politicians in Washington tell us that we're safer for outside the 10-mile radius. So she says, Mr. Comley, I'm paralyzed. And I said, well, of course I know, Jane, because, we've been taking care of you for about 5 years now. She says, if the Seabrook plant, which is only 12 miles from your nursing home, has an accident, what's the evacuation plan for me? Because I can't be moved. And I said, Gene, I don't know, but I'll go find out, because I'm licensed, as my son is, to provide adequate evacuation plans for everybody, not just the people that can run. So I went over the plant when PSNH owned it, and they told me they didn't have one for her. And I said, well, you can't open the plant then. And they snickered at me. And they said, oh, you got to go see the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And I said, who are they? Oh, they're a federal agency. They make sure all the plants are safe. And I said, well, it appears they haven't been by here lately, because you don't have one for everybody. So believing in democracy, and I have found out that the people, rather than Washington, have got to make it work. And so being a life member of the Republican Inner Circle, whatever that means, I figured Reagan would see me, but I felt that, if I got more than 51% of the town of Raleigh on a petition to him, he'd have to see me. He wouldn't see me. And then I started to find out how powerful this industry and the agency that's supposed to watchdog the industry is nothing more than a rubber stamp for the wishes of the industry. The executive director of the whole NRC, Victor Stello, Reagan appointee at that time, because of all the media attention I got, including I hired a plane out of Virginia to tow a banner near the White House which said, "Mr. Reagan, please see me calmly." He had to get in touch with me and I guess try and cool me off. And it didn't cool me off. He put in writing that I should leave Jean behind and give her a bottle of potassium iodine to drink, to be administered by a volunteer willing to stay behind during an accident. And let me assure you, those people are hard to recruit. So I began to see that the industry, in order to keep their profits going, and Congress, nuclear lobbyists fill their war chest up, I had to start a national whistleblower organization, and in 1987. And 6 months later, after I set up an office in the National Press Building, I get evidence sent to me in the mail from the agency that there were counterfeit, substandard parts in most of the nuclear plants in the United States, including Seabrook. Now, they're counterfeit because they said they were made in the USA when in fact they weren't. But more important, they were stamped as labeled tested parts when in fact they were never tested. Then we found out they were below standard. And because of the pressure that Congress and the industry put on the NRC, they lowered the standards so they wouldn't have to replace the parts. And then we know where some of these parts are. Up in Connecticut, Satin Industries supplied most of the counterfeit substandard fuses and circuit breakers. And circuit breakers are pretty important, so when there's a problem at the plant, it's supposed to trip. So I released the information, and then the U.S. Marshals were scheduled to show up at Satin Industries to seize all their records. The day before, place burned down. And just recently, I think it was in 2015, Seabrook was found to have had counterfeit substandard circuit breakers again. And what's very troubling is the fact for over 6 years now, and I've been on this for over 30, I asked the NRC for the last 6 years, I want to know, I want a list of all the counterfeit substandard parts that were built in Seabrook. I want to know when they were replaced, because a lot of times, you know what plants do, they wait until there's a plant shutdown. And I mean, would we do that if the counterfeit substandard parts were in the school bus? Would we wait 18 months for that? But they allow them to do that. So finally, the NRC in 2015, they wrote me a letter. And they said, Mr. Comley, your questions about when the list of parts that were built in Seabrook, when were they replaced, and if they weren't replaced, which ones weren't? We don't keep track of that. We allow the owners to do that. And again, you know, it cost over $1 million to shut down, so that's quite a deterrent. But again, they only know where some of these parts are, and when we first discovered it, when I got the evidence in the mail, I went over to PSNH and told them they had counterfeit parts in the plant, and their public relations fella, on TV, by the way, and I got copies of it, they lied and said they didn't have it. Then the GAO, Government Accounting Office, who does investigations if Congress asks them to, come out with a report 2 years after we released the information, and it's entitled Nuclear Health and Safety, Counterfeit Substandard Parts Are a Government-Wide Concern. And they listed Seabrook in there, and they had pipe, valves, circuit breakers that were listed in there. So again, you know, they lied to the public. And right now, there's 3 segments of our population, as I said, that are expendable in the eyes of the NRC. special needs. And I think everybody knows special needs, friends or even relatives. First responders, they're expendable too, because there's a gag order right now on the Massachusetts State Police. And there's a gag order on the New Hampshire National Guard. And those two individuals came to me, State Police and National Guard employee. And they said, Mr. Comley, we've been told that we cannot have any opinion and make no statement about whether the Seabrook plant evacuation plan can be implemented timely and safely during the summer months or any time. And I think anyone around here certainly knows that if you're in the middle of Hampton Beach and want to get out of there on July 4th or Labor Day that's coming up, there's no way. So you know what that means? There's a double standard for the Seabrook plant, as opposed to hospitals, nursing homes, businesses that have to comply with the Department of Safety laws 365 days a year. So that's how it's going to be shut down, because the people, more and more, they're going to rise up. Now, the third segment of the population that's expendable is the children that are at Triton Regional High School and all the high schools within the 10-mile radius. I am so proud of the media class at Triton Regional High School. See, I ran for president in 2015. I was serious about it, believe me. I still am. And I'm running now. And because Trump has lost his way, there's no question about it. And I'm going to help him find his way by hopefully coming here to address the democratic issues that are being made a mockery by the NRC, some people in Congress, and the press, too. The press aren't doing their job. Because, you know, suppression of the news is a violation of the public trust. And you can't defend it. Boston Globe is trying to defend it, but they can't. It's a disgrace. And I've already told them. I said, you know, some people are going to start canceling subscriptions, because when the Boston Globe found out that I was running for president in 2015, their one of the reporters that does features called me up. Eric Arnett was his name. He said, "Oh, Mr. Comley," he says, "you're running for president." He says, "Yeah, we want to do a feature on you." And I said, "Well, that's good. That's one way to get the people know who they could vote for and trust." And so he says, "When can I meet you?" I said, "Anytime you want to. You just let me know." 4 days went by. He called me up, and he says, "Mr. Comley," he says, "you do investigations." I said, "Yeah, I do." He said, "Well," he says, "you know, I'm doing features on who's running for president." I said, "Yeah, what's wrong with that? You know, doing a feature on somebody that's investigating the corruption in Washington." He said, "Well," he says, "I'm not going to do it now." I said, "Oh." I said, "Somebody must have got to you." So somebody canceled it. So anyway, the third one is the students in these high schools within a 10-mile radius, because I've been checking out when's the last time they had a nuclear drill, and they haven't. And even in Pawtucket, I was learned the other day that I was talking to a student that goes there, and he was just coming out of the Merrimack Town Hall, by the way, and I've been over there lately because I'm very disappointed that they wouldn't allow me to come in and do a presentation, because I think that the citizens of Merrimack should be aware of these things. But I'm asking them to reconsider, and hopefully they will do that, because all the other towns within the 10-mile radius have allowed me to come in and do a presentation in 2 towns outside the 10-mile radius, because I want to drive home the point about how far the accident came from Fukushima and Chernobyl.
So you've been able to get some of those towns to agree to to write a letter in support of having the nuclear first responder drills.
Right.
Yeah.
Georgetown has voted to send a letter, and that should be coming out soon. Ipswich has already written a letter to the NRC, and I tell you, that was one of the best ones. And I hope the other towns will follow pretty much in that language. Newburyport, just before I did the presentation at Salisbury this past Monday, the 14th, and I'll tell you, anybody that's interested, they can go on the Salisbury cable TV and look up Citizens' presentation. Now, I was the only one there that did the presentation, but I think I did a pretty good job, and but I think you'll find that very informative. But Newburyport, writing up a draft letter in regards to it. And of course, you know, Salisbury and Newburyport have asked for the shutdown of the Seabrook plant in the past. We the People's not asking for the shutdown. And We the People is a nuclear safety advocate. And if your plant is safe, you don't have a problem with us. But if it isn't, like Seabrook, we're going to shut it down. Because, you know, more and more people, and I encourage them, especially the parents that are in these high schools, should be outraged, because I tell you, if there's an accident at Seabrook, you're going to be saying, "Well, where's my kid?" And they're going to say, "Well, they're at a shopping center somewhere." Well, which one? Well, I don't think they even know where they're going to be. Mm-hmm. You know, if they haven't had the drills, what's that mean? That means our grandchildren, and I have grandchildren, my two sons went to Triton a long time ago, and that's what got us started in Raleigh, because, you know, the owners of Seabrook told the parents in Raleigh we couldn't have a say in the evacuation of our own children because they lived outside the 10-mile radius, even though our two sons went within the 10-mile radius at Triton. They were outraged, and that's how 80% of Raleigh get on a petition, and I really hope that the students at Triton will entertain signing a petition to President Trump, and he can help prove democracy still works in this country instead of what Sununu did. He made a mockery of our democratic process, because when he was chief of staff under Bush in the White House, you know what happened? He got a secret document from the Secretary of Energy, Admiral Watkins, to go and intimidate then the chairman of the NRC, then Sellon, into licensing Seabrook. So it circumvented the people, the activists' right to have a say in the process. And I hope that Chris Sununu, who is now and he just got in by the skin of his teeth in New Hampshire, I hope he doesn't have the same twisted priorities that his father has. And I'm writing him a letter, and I hope he'll allow me to meet with him, because that'll be a good turnaround. And that may help him if he's interested in getting reelected. But I said, if he doesn't, then I'll tell you, it's unbelievable. But the press, you know, the press really, the press in New Hampshire, they're on lockdown. And as far as We the People's issues, but hopefully.
Now you're also you're working on Attorney General Maura Healey as well, and you've got contact in New Hampshire as well as former state senator.
Yeah, well, Attorney General Healey, I have a lot of respect for her, because I showed up when she had the town hall meeting in Newburyport. And I tell you, my family's got a lot of roots in Newburyport. That's where our roots are. My father was born on Buck Street there, and my great-grandfather planted most of the trees in Newburyport because he was the first florist in Boston. And he brought over, my great-great-grandfather brought over some of the first plants from Japan. But when I was at the meeting with Miss Healy, after I did my presentation, she said, "Oh, Mr. Comley," she said, "you have really perked up my interest in your concerns about the Seabrook plant, and I want to meet with you after this meeting for a few minutes." And she did, and I met her mother, who is a nurse, and she certainly, when I talked with her, she certainly identified, she couldn't believe that people with special needs are going to be left behind. But Ms. Healy told me, she says, you know, I'm going to have my staff look at all your information here, your documentation and DVDs, and then I'll meet with you. Well, I got a call, kind of surprise call, last Thursday, and one of the paralegals at the Division of Environmental Protection in the Massachusetts Attorney General office called me up. She called me. She was on the phone. We were on the phone for 2 hours. And she asked me, you know, pretty much what I wanted. And I said, well, I gave a letter to Ms. Healy January the 9th, and I said, I'd like that, responded to. And the other thing, I'd like her very much to hold a press conference with Senator Tarr, Representative Hill, and former Sheriff Cousins. And also, and this took some courage in New Hampshire especially, former Representative Roberta Prevere, who was a representative for over 10 years in Hampton Falls, she also was the civil defense director there, wrote a letter. I met her. Somebody suggested that I meet with her, and after meeting with her, she wrote a letter to Mara Healy. And then I've been working with Representative Peter Smith, who's been a representative in New Hampshire for over 15 years. And he just wrote a letter to Mara Healy, and pretty powerful. And we all remember, I think, that Shannon, Attorney General Shannon, when Dukakis was running for president then, he fought the Attorney General in New Hampshire. That, of course, Sununu, when Dukakis ended the issue, Sununu suggested that the 10-mile radius be reduced to 1. And Chernobyl affected our cow's milk in Vermont, but that was his way. I mean, Seabrook is probably, without a doubt, the most controversial plant in the United States because of Sununu's twisted priorities. And but now, we got some of the same players here. We got an Attorney General in Massachusetts, and we have a Governor, Chris Sununu, and maybe he'll turn around and do what's right. And because I'm going to ask him to write a letter to the NRC asking for the first responders to have an opportunity to testify. They have families. Because there's no way, and all of them have told me, they said there's no way to evacuate that plant safely and timely during the summer months. And we have families, and we want to testify. And Mr. Comley, we want you to give the names out of us that have come to you, because we trust you. And I said, I don't think you want to do that. No, we insist, because we have family. I said, well, how about this? I'll give the names only to Senator Tarr's office, because I trust him. And I trust especially A.J. Paglia, who is his chief of staff, and he has the names. And with the understanding that they aren't released until we have this hearing. So that's what I did. And I'll tell you, I have met with over 170 first responders, and they all told me the evacuation plan is a joke. There's no way we can evacuate. And we have families, and hopefully they're going to stand up with these other whistleblowers that have put their careers on the line. Because, well, they get heat, believe me. And I'll tell you, Senator Tarr, Hill, and Cousins, they've had some heat on this, too, for what they've done. But I've had state troopers come to me and ask me this question. Why isn't Governor Baker endorsing what Senator Tarr, Representative Hill, and Sheriff Cousins, and now 5 towns are asking for it within the 10? Why isn't he doing that? I said, I don't know. Why don't you ask him? I met with him twice. And you know what they say to me? He's thrown us under the bus. And I said, well, he's got a lot of responsibility, a lot of things to do. And, I saw him at the Red Sox game not too long ago, photo up there. And I met with him twice. I met with him the day before he was sworn in. And I told him that Senator Tarr, Representative Hill, and Sheriff Cousins have endorsed this call, and it's a public safety issue. Oh, Mr. Comley, I'm going to get down and talk with them. I said, well, that'd be great. And I've met with him since, in February of this year. And he still hasn't gone. I just learned that he never went to them to ask them, why are they doing this? So he has and maybe maybe we need to do, maybe more and more people have got to call the office and ask him why, and encourage him to do it. Because, and I hope more and more people are going to get involved, because, we got signs up in Raleigh all over, and we've had $7,000 worth of those signs stolen. And right now, and I hated to do it because my family's been in Raleigh since 1954, but I'm suing the town of Raleigh, and I'm suing the selectmen individually, because you know what they did? They ordered our signs down in a selective way. And they said, "Oh, Mr. Comley, you can't put signs up on the electric poles. The town owns the poles. I think they rent them, And I said, if you're going to take our signs down, why aren't you taking the other signs down right below it that are unrelated to this issue? You can't do that in America. That's selective enforcement. We're also suing the Department of Transportation because, on Route 1, you can't put a sign up unless it's 33 feet from the middle of the road. And just look at all the signs that are not complying with the rules. So they took down our signs, and guess who's representing them? The Attorney General Office of so we got quite a situation going here. And Mara Haley, I think going to lose that case, because this isn't the first time I've been down the road on this. I sued the NRC. They're the only ones I've ever sued, believe me, up until now. And the District of Columbia in Washington, Judge Pratt, in a summary judgment, and those of you who don't know what a summary judgment is, the facts are so overwhelming, they don't have a trial. And Judge Pratt found that Victor Stello, the guy that said leave him behind, give him iodine, and come after me with a federal subpoena through the Department of Justice, looking for tape recordings they always said I had, of high-level officials in Washington, and I recently admitted that I do have them, but the only person I'm going to give them to, a transcript anyway, is Mara Healy, and under right circumstances, because I don't give up names, but I will tell her I will suggest to her who to subpoena, because when Bush and Reagan created the first Inspector General's office, they gave them subpoena power for only records, not people. You know why? They don't want to put people under oath, because if they're under oath, and they have to tell the truth, and they go to jail, and nobody likes to be a snitch. But so if they're subpoenaed, and Mara Haley, guess what? She's got subpoena power. This is one of the biggest scandals you're ever going to see in your lifetime. And I'll tell you, I've had threats in my life, and that's one thing. But when people come out and scare my wife and kids and burn a car on my farm at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, right after my wife left the house while I was in Washington, that got my attention. And look, I got a lot of passion. When people threaten, and I've had people threaten my life 4 weeks ago, and the police are looking into it, and hopefully the Massachusetts Attorney General is going to do it too. And nobody's going to stop me. Nobody. And I love what I'm doing. Absolutely love what I'm doing, but I need help.
All right. Well, Steve, thank you for that background on that, and we're going to watch. We're going to watch and see how it all goes. I think the main thing that we can keep an eye on right now is what the Attorney General does, and have the individual towns conduct those safety drills for nuclear power. I remember the atomic bomb drills we used to have in elementary school, where you sit in the hallway and put your your head between your knees and stay still.
Yeah.
But it's going to be interesting, and it seems like it's boiling up right now. So we'll keep your eye on it. We'll have to get you back and talk about it again.
Well, I appreciate it. And Win, I'm glad to see you back on the job. It's wonderful that the owners here have given you that opportunity, because you're a real asset to this station. And more people hopefully going to be listening to you. And I have given a challenge to the Newburyport News. I don't understand why they haven't endorsed our call. And hopefully, they will soon, because I know Gatehouse Media, they're paying attention to We the People's work. In fact, we were on an article, they wrote an article in 7 of their papers, and guess what? They own 1,000 papers across the United States, and you can't intimidate them. I have a lot of respect for them. Well, hopefully the Globe will start reading some of those papers.
All right. Well, Steve, again, thank you very much. We the People founder, and of course, you're founded in Rowley, and you're passionate about what you do. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Steve. We'll get you back again.
Thanks very much.
All right. Steve Comley, our guest this morning here on WJOP Radio, WJOP LP 96.3 FM in Newburyport.